If you've ever used Wi-Fi, HTTPS, a VPN, or secure messaging, this video explains why it doesn't instantly get you robbed. In the next few minutes, you'll understand how two total strangers can create a shared secret in public, why that was once believed to be impossible, and the single math assumption holding the entire secure internet together. Hi nerds, welcome back. I'm Addie LaMarr, and I've spent 15 years in cybersecurity with a concentration in cryptography, and I break down cyber threats before they blindside you. By the end of this, you'll be able to look at that little padlock in your browser and actually know what's going on, and why it might not last forever. Let's get into it. The internet starts with a secret that it doesn't have. You open your laptop in a noisy cafe, hop on the sketchy free Wi-Fi, and type your bank's URL. Milliseconds later, your browser and a server you've never met are behaving like old friends with a shared secret, except they didn't share one beforehand. And the whole time, the system assumes the worst. Someone can listen to every packet, copy every message, and even modify the traffic in flight. In the physical world, secrecy used to mean shrinking the circle. So you would trust a courier, hand over a codebook, or lock a safe and count who all has the combination. Computer networks obliterated that model. Now you've got millions of strangers wanting to talk securely without ever meeting. The old answer that was to just exchange keys in person first suddenly looks like telling everyone to mail their house keys around the world before they're even allowed to talk. When you zoom out, the weird part is the attitude. Your browser behaves as if it can step into a hostile global network and somehow create secrecy on top of it. So how did that one demand, "Just let me have a private conversation with someone I've never met," turn into a roadblock for cryptography once networks started going global? The deadlock that blocked the internet. Before the mid-1970s, everyone agreed on one fact about secure communication. You can't have secrecy without a shared secret key first. Every real system was symmetric. That means they use the same key to lock and unlock. If you could break the key, you own the whole channel. Militaries and banks handled this with ridiculous logistics. From keys in sealed envelopes, to codebooks chained to desks, to couriers flying across oceans with briefcase actually cuffed to their wrists. It works when your world is 50 embassies and a handful of bases, but that completely collapses when your world is hundreds of thousands of users on an open network. Because with symmetric keys, the scale explodes. Imagine you have a network of people who all want to talk to each other securely. We call the number of people N. If the system is symmetric, meaning every pair of people needs their own unique shared secret key, things get out of hand really quickly. Contrary to popular belief, you don't just need N keys, aka one for each person. You need a key for Alice to talk to Bob, a different one for Bob to talk to Carol, and so on. The number of keys you need explodes to something closer to N squared. In a global network of millions of users, this meant you'd need trillions of keys. The logistics of securely generating, distributing, and tracking all those physical keys was frankly impossible. That was the deadlock that blocked the internet. And there was a vicious little loop hiding underneath. If you send a key in clear, an eavesdropper can copy it. If you encrypt the key, you already needed a key. If you somehow had a safe way to send the key, why not just send the message that way? Experts genuinely thought, two people who've never met cannot agree on a secret key over a public line. If you can do that, you've already solved the whole problem. As ARPANET and early computer networks grew, this went from academic annoyance to hard blocker. You simply couldn't expect every new business relationship on a global network to wait for a physical key drop. So what mental move breaks that catch-22 and lets two strangers pull a shared secret out of a channel everyone can see? The insight that broke the deadlock. The breakthrough was a new way to think about information itself. Whitfield Diffie and Hellman asked a question that sounded almost stupid at the time. What if some information can be public on purpose, and other information stays private, and combining them still produces a secret only we can know? Up to that point, the key was sacred. You guarded it, copied it carefully, never let it leak. Diffie-Hellman flipped that. It introduced asymmetry. Each side creates a private value they never reveal. From that, they compute a corresponding public value they're perfectly happy to shout across the network. Those public values are effectively built using a one-way function. Easy to go forward, but brutally hard to reverse. Now picture the exchange. Both sides agree on some public parameters. Alice picks a secret number, computes her public value, sends it. Bob does the same. They swap in the open with an eavesdropper watching every second of it, and each side combines my private with your public, and both land on the same shared secret. That final secret never crosses the wire. All anyone else sees is the public scaffolding. So what's the trick that makes Diffie-Hellman exchange work? It's all built on a one-way street of math. Think of it like a secret recipe. The process itself is called modular exponentiation. It's the part where you combine the public numbers everyone can see with your private number, and poof, you get the shared secret key. Going that direction is simple. It's easy for your browser and it's easy for the server. But trying to run that process backward to look at the final combined public number and figure out the original private secret, that's the discrete logarithm problem. When the numbers are large enough, it's like trying to perfectly unmix two paints that have been stirred together. Everyone agrees it's virtually impossible for any normal computer. That difficulty, the huge one-way wall of math, is the single assumption that the entire secure internet is standing on. To a 1970s cryptographer, this felt like cheating. If you can agree on a key in public, hadn't you just broken the rules of the universe? A lot of people thought they had. Some even dismissed the idea as too implausible to matter, but the math held. And once you can agree on a key without ever sharing one in advance, the impossible problem of key distribution suddenly looks solvable. So what happens to the internet once this odd little key agreement ritual becomes something machines can run millions of times a second? The infrastructure that fell out of agreement. The moment you let strangers agree on keys in public, the entire shape of secure systems shift. Take your browser. When you hit an HTTPS site, the fancy padlock is writing on a surprisingly simple story. Your browser and the server perform a key agreement. Nowadays, some flavor of Diffie-Hellman then hands a resulting secret to fast symmetric ciphers like AES. Diffie-Hellman doesn't do the bulk encryption. Instead, it's doing something upstream, minting a fresh, high-entropy secret that both sides can trust. That pattern shows up everywhere, like web browsers negotiating TLS session keys, to VPNs spinning up encrypted funnels over completely untrusted networks, to SSH sessions into remote servers, to secure messaging protocols that keep rotating keys in the background while you just see typing ... bubbles. Before this, secure communication between strangers at scale was a complete fantasy. You could secure a bank link and spy channel, but you couldn't secure everyone talking to everyone on demand. Diffie-Hellman changed that by making key agreement cheap and repeatable. Suddenly, you can give every connection its own key, throw keys away after one session, and you can even build systems where compromising a server's long-term key doesn't magically decrypt years of past traffic. That last bit, known as forward secrecy, is where the stakes quietly jumped. Protocols started using ephemeral Diffie-Hellman keys. This meant new random secrets each section, keys that exist just long enough to bring a connection into being and then vanish into thin air. Now, recording encrypted traffic just in case becomes a much worse deal for attackers. If they can't break the math at the time of the handshake, grabbing a key years later doesn't give them a free time machine. Though all of this depends on one quiet assumption, that the one-way function at the heart of Diffie-Hellman stays painfully hard to run in reverse. So what exactly is that assumption, and how long can we realistically lean on it? The assumption everything is standing on. Under all the protocol diagrams and acronyms, the entire internet stands on one simple bet. Going forward is easy, but going backwards is impossible. This bet is formally known as the discrete logarithm problem we mentioned earlier. Here's how it works. You start with three things. First, a huge public prime number, known as P, and if you weren't paying attention in math class, think of a prime number as a special number that can only be divided by 1 and itself. It's mathematically solid, making it an excellent base for a secret. You also need a starting point called the generator, also known as G, and your private secret number, known as X. You use a simple calculation to combine G and X to get a public result. This forward step is verifiable. The trick is that trying to look at that public result and figure out your original secret number X is virtually impossible when the numbers are large enough. That difficulty is the one quiet assumption that protects your connection. That hardness has been hammered on for decades. People have built clever algorithms like baby step, giant step, Pollard's row, and the number field sieve that absolutely crushed small or badly chosen parameters. And every time those attacks improved, cryptography responded by moving to larger primes, tightening how those primes are generated, picking safer groups like elliptic curves, where the best known attacks are still astronomically computationally expensive. Instead of promising unbreakable, we talk about bits of security. A 128-bit security level means that the best known attack costs around 2 to the 128th power operations, which is so much work that it's easier to bribe someone, hack a device, or trick a user. That's the real game, making breaking the math more expensive than attacking literally anything else in the system. For Diffie-Hellman, that means using primes big enough that even if state-level adversaries can't do the discrete log, avoiding weak parameters where pre-computation or subgroup tricks leak information, or treating randomness like oxygen. Without strong random exponents, the whole thing suffocates. But let's call this what this really is. Not a promise of forever, but a moving safety margin. We're constantly stretching the parameters just ahead of what we think attackers can do. So what happens when someone shows up with a completely different kind of computer and a shortcut straight through the math we've been leaning on? Diffie-Hellman meets quantum computation. Contrary to popular belief, quantum computing doesn't mean faster computers. For Diffie-Hellman, it's an entirely different species of threat. Right now, discrete log is hard because every known classical algorithm has to grind through a search space that explodes with key size. A big enough quantum computer running Shor's algorithm doesn't play by those same rules. It can compute discrete logs and factor large integers in polynomial time. In plain English, this means the one-way hill that Diffie-Hellman has to climb becomes a smooth ramp. That flips the table in two icky ways. First, any Diffie-Hellman handshake recorded today becomes a ticking time bomb. If an attacker captures the full transcript, like the public values or parameters, and stores it, a future quantum computer could run Shor's on those values and recover the shared secrets. What looked like secure in 2026 turns into readable in 2035 if nothing changes. Second, it's not simply one protocol. Everything built on the same assumption shutters. So that's finite field Diffie-Hellman, elliptic curve Diffie-Hellman, RSA key transport, DSA and ECDSA signatures, which is elliptic curve DSA, which is a big chunk of the public key universe. So is everything forever doomed? Nah, fam. But it does mean that the math under key exchanges has an expiration date built in. The response is already unfolding. New post-quantum key exchange mechanisms are being standardized, schemes based on lattice problems and other hard structures that, as far as we know, resist both classical and quantum attacks. As a defense, protocols are starting to run in hybrid mode. Your browser and server do a familiar Diffie-Hellman and a post-quantum key exchange in parallel, then mix both secrets to get the final key. If quantum turns out to be slower than expected, the classical piece still holds. If quantum arrives earlier and shreds discrete log, the post-quantum half keeps the door locked. Underneath all this, the real lesson looks a lot like the one Diffie and Hellman taught in the 70s. Security is a moving agreement between what we want to protect and what our computation can realistically prevent. We broke one impossible rule when we learned to create secrets in public. Quantum computing just forces us to ask a bigger question. If changing how we compute once rewrote what secrecy means on the internet, what does the next rewrite look like, and who gets left behind if we don't adapt in time? If you found Diffie-Hellman interesting, you're going to love this video all about quantum cryptography. I will see you in that video next.